Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to Life on the Wrist. So Alfredo Paramico is probably one of the most well-renowned, most well-known vintage watch collectors. He has owned some of the most amazing pieces. So today we're going to be discussing some of my favorite pieces that he has owned. This is kind of a combination of his talking watches that he did on Hodinkee, as well as kind of some research that I've done. Just basic research about watches that he has owned. So that's going to be the topic for today. I think this is an interesting one, especially because Alfredo Paramico definitely has a specific type of taste, and the watches that he has owned are probably some of the most significant watches ever. So that's going to be the topic for today. But if you are new to the channel, be sure to smash that like button for us. It really does help us out. Let's see if we can get this video to 20 likes. That is always our goal. A lot of the times we have achieved it, but I think for Alfredo Paramico's sake, we should definitely try and bust through that those 20 likes. So Alfredo Paramico is an Italian-born collector. It seems like vintage watch collectors always come, or some of the most well-renowned vintage watch collectors kind of come from Italy, because they were really the first country to kind of be involved in vintage watch collecting. Alfredo Paramico worked in investment banking and obviously started buying vintage watches with the money that he made in investment banking, and is considered, like I said, one of the most well-renowned, most well-respected collectors as well. He is so into vintage watches, and he kind of combined his passion for vintage watches, but also his profession of investment banking and the knowledge that he gained through that experience. And he actually started a fund, an investment fund that invests in vintage watches. It's called the Elite Advisors. This is a pretty cool hobby. It's funny because I read some articles about his time doing this, and according to him, he only purchases watches that he would actually own. It doesn't really matter about the investors, which I think actually is a testament to his taste, because a lot of the times if you buy what you own, sometimes it's not the most, investor-friendly watch, but that's not the point of buying watches. But I think that's a testament to the fact that he really does have amazing taste that just about everyone likes. So like I said, I'm going to discuss 3 watches that were kind of my favorite watches, favorite unique watches that he has owned. So the first one, and you probably guessed this one, is the JB Champion Unique Patek Philippe Platinum Chronometer watch. So back in, I think, the late 40s, early 50s, Patek Philippe actually would produce unique watches for people who commissioned them. A lot of the times these people were extremely wealthy or extremely well known, so it was kind of something that they did a little bit more. Now, if you kind of fast forward today, it's a little bit less common to have unique Patek Philippe's being produced, just because I think the way in which our markets have kind of shifted. But this watch is a unique piece made by Patek Philippe, and this was commissioned by JB Champion, who was a very successful criminal defense attorney. And this watch is actually one of the simplest watches. It's actually just a time-only watch. However, he did ask Patek Philippe to create a custom dial for him, which said made especially for JB Champion. So you're looking at a unique Patek Philippe with a unique dial. Furthermore, this watch was actually sent to the Geneva Observatory and partook in some of the competitions when it comes to evaluating this watch for accuracy, and I believe it placed 3rd in the competition that it took place in. So you're looking at a unique Patek Philippe in platinum with a unique dial with JB Champion's name on it that went to the Geneva Observatory, so it's one of the most accurate watches ever produced by any watch company. And this watch was, of course, owned by Alfredo Paramico. So in 2012 at auction, this was bought for around $4 million US, and Alfredo Paramico was the highest bidder for this watch. So what makes this watch extremely special is, 1, it's in platinum. 2, it's a unique watch from Patek Philippe in platinum. It has a unique dial with JB Champion's name on it, so it's historically significant, especially with those who are involved in the life of JB Champion, or simply the history of criminal law. And it is one of the most accurate watches ever produced. To say significant is, I think, a little bit of an understatement. But that's one of my first watch that I think is one of my favorites that Alfredo Paramico has owned. The second watch is just as relevant. This watch comes from a company called Omega. You may have heard of them. This watch is actually a chronograph from the 1920s. It's a little bit different than your typical chronograph, which has pushers at 2 and 5, or 2 and 4. This is a 2-register chronograph with a oversized case, enamel dial. It is a mono pusher chronograph. The chronograph button is actually located at 6 o'clock, and many believe this watch to be the earliest version of Omega's the earliest Omega chronograph wristwatch ever produced by the manufacturer. This is actually insane to think of, that Alfredo Paramico actually owns or owned, I don't know if he still owns this watch, but to own a watch that is the first chronograph wristwatch manufactured by Omega is just insane. I think the way that you kind of identify that it probably was one of the first, and Alfredo Paramico kind of laid this out in the Talking Watch episode they did on Hodinkee, is the lugs are actually extremely small. So it kind of looks like a pocket watch that's being converted to a wristwatch. This is probably an early rendition of Omega trying to kind of, play around and figure out how to make a chronograph wristwatch. So again, an extremely historically significant watch for Omega, historically significant watch for watchmaking, because when you think about it, this is one of the earliest Omega chronograph wristwatches ever produced. Omega is known for many things, but among that is having a chronograph that went to space, and that is the Omega Speedmaster. So this watch really stemmed and kind of gave birth to them creating one of the most significant chronographs ever produced by any watch company, and that is a fact. I don't think one can argue that. So an extremely significant watch, and of course Alfredo Paramico owns it. So that's the second watch. And the third watch, I think I kind of cheated here, but this is actually just a reference. And this is the trio of Patek Philippe 570s that Alfredo Paramico owns. I think this is one of the best trios of watches. I know Auro Montanari or John Goldberger owns a 570 in steel, but Alfredo Paramico owns 3. Alfredo Paramico owns a steel version, a yellow gold version, and a pink gold version of the 570. The 570 is often, I think, kind of well known within vintage watch collecting, and is kind of considered one of the best proportioned watches that Patek Philippe has ever made. Actually, any watch company has ever made. It has these beautiful brigade numbers that have become extremely popular within the world of watches, and I think that's why this is kind of what this really just showed watch collectors how significant these are. So like I said, he has a 570 in steel with a kind of cream white dial. He has a yellow gold 570 with kind of a yellow dial, and then the last one that he has is a pink gold case 570 with a pink gold dial. It's actually I believe he also had paperwork for this watch, and it describes it as a yellow dial with a pink kind of like hue. I think that's kind of how it was described. So again, this trio of 570s really shows, in my opinion, the best of the best when it comes to Patek Philippe time-only watches. And this kind of stemmed my interest because I actually fell in love with this watch. I think I love the fact that the steel version of this watch has different hands to the yellow gold and pink gold versions. If you look at the hour hand, it's a little bit different, but I really fell in love with this reference, and this is kind of where my love for Patek Philippe kind of came about. It wasn't super complications or anything like that. It was actually just a simple 570 time-only watch. So what's cool is if you're looking for a modern rendition of the 570, you can look at the 5196P, which is same design aesthetics, same design as the 570. However, this case is actually in platinum. So if you're looking for a modern version of this trio, definitely look at the 5196P. So those are the 3 kind of watches that I absolutely love from Alfredo Paramico's collection. Historically significant, some of the best pieces you can think of. I mean, this is just 3 of the watches. He has some insane watches in his collection. So if you haven't seen his Talking Watches with Hodinkee, be sure to check that out, because he does have some pretty insane watches that I didn't talk about in this episode. this is my opinion as well. So just to recap, it's the three watches are the unique Patek Philippe chronometer watch, which was commissioned by JB Champion, the 1920s Omega chronograph, which is known as being one of the first chronograph wristwatches produced by Omega. And lastly is the trio of 570s that he has, and of course kind of stem my love for Patek Philippe. So those are the three watches. If you have made it this far and you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button. It really does help us out. Also, while you're by that, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We create videos about watches, about anything you can think of. On Monday, we released a video about learning about vintage watches, what is important to collectors. So if you want to check that out, it will be in our channel. We release that on Monday. And with that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time.